Hey guys, it's Tanyelle and I am here to do another adoption talk. So if you guys are new here, welcome. November is Adoption Awareness Month, and so this month I am just taking some time to talk about adoption, talk about our experience with adoption, our process, why we chose to adopt, and all that good stuff, along with some other topics about adoption. So if you're interested in adoption, stick around and join the conversation. For those of you that have already been along for the conversation, welcome back. Grab your drinks, get comfortable, and let's talk adoption. So guys, today I figured that I would talk about our second adoption. Just share the process with that adoption, the transition, and all of those good things, because they do look different and they were different. And then after that, we would start kind of talking about different adoption topics and things like that. So our second adoption, first question, why adopt again? We already had adopted one child. We now had 5 children total, so why adopt again? Well, for starters, we always knew that we wanted to adopt more than one child. So when we first adopted our first child, we knew eventually we were going to adopt a second child. We had a 5th child. So 2 more biological children after our last adoption, and figured, okay, we're done having biological children. We have 5. Our magical number is 6. So let's go ahead and start the process of adoption again. So kind of thought this is a good time, you know, we're sailing along, we're cruising along. Let's go ahead and start our process for our second adoption. So the year was 2013 that we made this decision to start our second adoption. Another reason that we knew we wanted to adopt again is we didn't want our son to be our only adopted child. We wanted him to have someone that he could share that bond with. You know, for our bio children, they aren't going to understand a lot of the things that he may have experienced, or feelings that he may have, or things like that. And we wanted him to have someone that he could kind of share those feelings and bonds with. Even though their situations may be different, he would still have someone to kind of share that with. So at the time when we started that adoption, he was, he was 7. So 2013, we decided, let's jump into our next adoption. So we immediately started talking about, you know, what type of child we would like to add to our family. My husband initially thought international. He did not give me pushback this time. I mean, he was on board, ready to go. So, you know, we talked about it. Initially, that's what we wanted, was an older child. And we ended up adopting a younger child. So we decided this time around, we're gonna stay true to our guns. We're gonna stay course, and we want to adopt an older child. Our oldest child at the time at home was 12, so we knew we didn't want a child older than her. We wanted her to maintain that older child number, so we knew we wanted a child younger than 12. Hadn't decided on boy or girl or any of that, but knew we wanted, you know, an older child that was younger than 12. So we knew that we were looking at another DCS situation. So we immediately started contacting some resources. We found a local agency that was contracted through DCS. So they worked with DCS, but they were like a private kind of DCS agency. So immediately reached out to them, started working with them, started going through the home study process with them. We started our PATH training again, started doing everything that they required of us, and it just did not work out. We worked with them for an entire year, and it didn't work out. I mean, we ran into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, to the point where I was starting to question if we should adopt again. Like, I was starting to say, is the universe telling us no, we don't need to adopt again? And my husband was like, oh ye of little faith. This is not a no, this is a not yet. We will not be quitters, we will stay in this. So I was like, okay, well, excuse me, sir, you know, the one who was not so sure the first time. So I mean, he was like heels dug in, we're gonna do this. So I'm like, okay, you know, let me follow. So, you know, fixed myself, regained my composure, and decided that I was going to reach out to our previous agency that we had used. So we had moved to a different city that was 4 hours away, so I wasn't sure if they were even going to be able to do our home study again and all of that. So contacted them, explained our situation, and she was like, yes, yes, and yes. And so she immediately signed us up, and she made the 4-hour trip to our house 4 times to do our home study. So we had to repeat all of the stuff. We had to get another background check. Even though we had did all of this with the DCS agency, we had to do it all again with this agency. We didn't have to take our PATH classes again, thank goodness. But we did have to go through all of the other steps and background checks and all of that stuff again. So so in 2014, in I want to say May or June of 2014, we stopped working with the DCS agency, contacted our previous agency in July of 2014, started working with them in August, and by April of 2015 had an approved home study in our hands. So that's what I'm talking about, guys. That's what I'm talking about. So along the way of that, my mom passed away in September of 2014, and then I found out I was pregnant as well. So once again, I'm thinking, is this the universe way of saying no? Like, you don't need to do this, like, stop. And so throughout this process, I had already had located this sibling group, fell in love with them, and had thought that, you know, our home study was going to be done in time to reach out to their social worker about them, but that didn't happen. But because I had already, and by the time we were done, or by the time we were done with that agency, picked up another agency, the kids had been adopted. But at that time, I now had the desire of siblings on my heart. And I went to my husband and I'm like, man, I just have this huge calling, this huge desire for a sibling group on my heart. Like, I feel like that's the direction that we need to go. So we went to our social worker and I told her, I'm like, hey, I think, you know, ultimately this may be our last adoption, and we really would like to have the option to do a sibling group if possible. And so she was like, well, I'll see, you know, we'll do a home study for a sibling group of 2 and just see if you guys get approved for that, because it's a different process for sibling groups. So we ended up getting approved for a sibling group of 2. So for us, that was like, okay, we have the door open for a sibling group of 2, or if an only child comes along, you know, we do have these options. So that was in April of 2015. My baby Phoenix was born in March of 2015. So just to kind of give you guys the timeline. So in May of 2015, now by the time I got my home study in hand in April, I had uploaded it to Adopt Us Kids, set up our profile and everything. So literally I got my home study, I went home, updated, uploaded our profile, put our information out there, and was ready to hit the ground running. In May of 2015, our social worker called us and she was like, hey, and I'm like, hey. She's like, so I got a call from a DCS social worker in another state, and they saw your family on Adopt Us Kids, and they think that you guys would be a good family to add to the matching process with this, you know, this group of kids. So I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, it is a sibling group. So I'm like, oh, a sibling group, okay. She's like, it's a sibling group of 3. I'm like, 3? First of all, we weren't approved for 3 and 3. And so she's like, yes, but you know, I think if you guys are interested that we can get you approved for 3. So I'm like, okay. You know, I called my husband, I'm telling him, and he's like, well, you know, tell them to send the information. Let's read their profile and just see what we think. So they send over their information, and we're reading through their profile. And the whole time, guys, we're just thinking in our head, 3, 3, 3. I don't know. Can we do this? Can we do this? And literally, we literally had to like pray and meditate and talk and pray and meditate and talk and pray and meditate and talk about this. And it took us 30 days to finally say, okay, yes, this is what we want to do. And ultimately, it wasn't a thing or anything like that that happened. It was literally a feeling that just, for both of us, that yes, we need to do this. So we called our social worker and told her, yes, we want to put our name in. Is there still, you know, an option? Is there still time? And she's like, let me check. So, because that had been 30 days. So she called and they were like, absolutely, yes. So with this particular situation, they were in another state and they went through a matching process. So we had to put together a book about our family, and then we sent that to them, and they had that as well as our home study. So we sent all that to them in July. We talked to their main social worker, and she just gave us more information, kind of told us what the process was going to look like, and this was in July. So we were like, okay. We didn't hear anything else for the rest of July. So we were like, oh, okay, well, they must have went a different direction. So let me hit the ground running again. So started kind of just looking here and there. But honestly, I was so like burnt out that I wasn't just wholeheartedly looking. So in August, like mid-August, we got a call and they were like, hey, okay, so we are... I'm like, what? Where you guys come from? So they were like, we're gonna be meeting with the board, and basically the board is like a group of people. Each one of our kids had their own social worker, they had their own attorney, then there was like the head of DCS, then there was like the main social worker, and so they were all gonna be meeting together and presenting these families for the kids, and then kind of deciding which family they thought was the best fit. So they were like, we're having this meeting, we need, you know, you guys to be there via telephone, and we're just gonna ask you some questions and all of that. So we're like, okay. So we set up that meeting for August, called, and you guys, they drilled us. I mean, like question after question after question after question, and tough questions. I literally hung up that phone and I'm looking at my husband, I'm like, I don't know. Like, some of the answers, they probably were like negative. No, because I was as real as I possibly could be with them. And so we didn't hear anything else for the rest of August. So I was like, okay, they obviously went a different direction. And then in September, we got a call and was like, you guys have been matched. And we're like, what? So the next step would be for you guys to come down here and spend the weekend with them. So we're like, what? Like, our heads are like racing. And so essentially they are like, we would like for just you and your husband, if possible, to come and just spend the weekend and get to know them, and let's just see how we feel after the weekend. So we're like, okay. So in the end of September, we drove down there. They were 14 hours away, and spent the weekend with them. And let me say, it was a difference from the first adoption and this adoption. So we were, you know, again, these were older kids, 11, 4, and 3. So 2 younger ones, but an older one as well. And initially when we met with them, we met at a park, and it was not like the first adoption. You know, our first adoption, it was like instant connection. This one was kind of like a situation where we felt and we knew like these are our kids, but it wasn't like that instant connection. It was just a different kind of feeling. So we hung out with them at the park, and we played with them that weekend, and just hung out and did all kind of, you know, different fun activities. So we left that weekend just processing that, you know, processing how it was just a different feeling for me, processing how my husband felt, and all of that good stuff. So the next step was for us to bring all of our kids down and hang out for the weekend. So we loaded everybody up and we drove another 14 hours to spend the weekend out there. And on the way there, we got a call, and they had told us that their foster parents were attesting the adoption. So basically the foster parents had said, you know, we want to adopt them, and we don't want them to adopt them, and they were attesting it. Now, our kids have been in foster care with this same foster family for almost 3 years, and they hadn't showed interest in adoption, but now they were attesting it. So our social worker called and was like, you know, hey, this is what's happening. We know you guys are on the way here, because essentially if they would have won this, then the kids wouldn't have been able to come spend the weekend with us. So she was like, we've expedited it with the judge, we're just waiting to hear back, you know, we'll let you guys know. So we just kept driving in hopes that, you know, it would turn out good. And so again, unlike our first adoption, the foster parents were amazing. I mean, it was just a smooth transition. They had tons of baby pictures of him, and they gave us all those baby pictures. They had made like this scrapbook for him with them and with us in it, and just a combination, something that we will be able to present to him when he's older. They just, I mean, the transition from them to us was just seamless. And so here we were in this situation, and now the foster parents were basically saying, no, we don't want them to be adopted. And we later found out that they had created like this Facebook post and this blast, like just bashing us and just talking about how we already had 6 kids, and just basically talking bad about our family. Had never met us, didn't know our situation or anything. So got there the next day, she called and was like, the judge denied it, and you know, waived in your favor, so we'll be bringing them to you. So they came to the hotel, and you know, we're all in this hotel, and we have all 9 of the kids in the suite together, and it was chaos. It was chaos. I mean, it was, I can't say it any other way. It was pure chaos. And we left that weekend feeling like, are we crazy people? Like, we have to be crazy people. We have to be crazy people. But still feeling like, but these are our kids. Like, when we left feeling like, whew, that was crazy. But still feeling like we're leaving a piece of our heart there. So it was this crazy mixed emotions of feelings. And so we came back home, got a call from the social worker that essentially the foster parents were not gonna let this die, that they were gonna fight this until the end. So at that point, we didn't know, you know, what was gonna happen. And we ultimately knew that this is what we really wanted to do, because we didn't back down. That the foster parents stepping in and kind of battling this could have gave us an out. So if we were feeling like any sense of doubt at that point, we could have been like, well, you know, we don't really want to go through this, and if they're saying they want to adopt them, then, you know, go ahead, let them, type thing. But we didn't feel that. Like, we felt like, no, like, these are our kids, we gotta fight for our kids. So the next step was for them to come visit us. So they came down in October to visit us for the weekend. And you know, they got here and we showed them their rooms, and it was like having everybody together under one roof. And I mean, it was great. We had a great weekend. At the end of that weekend, the social worker came to us and was like, okay, the foster parents are really causing havoc. Like, it's gotten really bad there, and what we're gonna do is, when we get back, is just remove them from that home and put them in another foster care until it's time for them to move here. And we were like, okay, you know, that's a lot of transitioning. And they were like, you know, the other option is we could see about them just staying here rather than them flying back, moving out of that home, moving into another foster home, and then coming back here. And so we were like, that's a no-brainer. Absolutely, of course they can just stay. So they checked on it and got that approved, and we're like, okay, well, they're staying, so here you go. So it went from what was supposed to be a weekend visit to now you're here forever. And again, our oldest was 11 in that group, so you guys can only imagine what type of challenges would come along with that. You're thinking you're coming to visit for a weekend, and then you find out, nope, you're staying, you're never going back. The challenges for us as a family, because we have prepped ourselves for it to be a weekend visit, and it turned into a forever visit. So again, unlike our first adoption, where we had all of these visits and this very structured and laid out and easy and seamless transition, this one was like, here you go, good luck type situation. So same as the very first adoption, where we had 6 months, so 6 months waiting period of just seeing if it's gonna work, how you guys are transitioning, and all of that before your adoption is approved. Because we were using DCS, because they were in DCS custody, so we were using DCS in their state. Crazy, because DCS in our state had literally taken us through the ringer both times we tried to adopt through them, and here we were adopting through DCS in another state, and they were like on board and super helpful. And I mean, the process and experience with adopting through DCS in this state was great. So they called and told us we had a date on the docket, and you know, if we wanted to come we could, but we didn't have to be there, because it was literally just going to be the judge signing some papers, and that they would just call us and let us know when everything was done, that we could listen in on the phone to the docket and to the judge and all that stuff. So in February of 2016, we took a trip to Gatlinburg, and we were in Gatlinburg hanging out, and we got the call that they were in court, and we listened in, and we literally heard it over the phone with them saying like, this adoption is now finalized, and these 3 kids are now the children of Danielle and Jabalani Cole, and their names shall be this forever and more. And it was crazy. It was like a surreal moment because of the type of transition we were in with them. It was just a super surreal moment, and so many different emotions came along with that particular closing of that adoption. So if you've hung in there this whole time, thank you. And that was the process of our second adoption. So as you can see, totally different from our first one. Yeah, so that's it. So again, thank you for watching. And if you guys have any questions along the way about adoption, our process, anything for us, feel free to ask them below. If you have not subscribed, please join the family. If you have already subscribed, thank you so much. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.